This week, we've seen the government's new scheme to boost dwindling car production numbers. We've seen 120,000 motorists left stranded. We've seen Lotus's alleged departure from the UK and everything in between. It's been a packed start to July, but here's everything you need to know to be fully up to speed. Hello, and a very warm welcome back to the channel. Let's get into our first story because we do have quite a bit to cover today. So the UK aims to be back in the top 15 global car makers by 2030. New industry strategy includes crucial energy cost reduction, which is badly needed to be honest, and could entice new manufacturers to build here. Now it's no secret the UK car industry has been an abject mess over the last few years. Plant closures, job losses, car shortages, and the lowest production numbers in over 75 years. Now largely, a lot of this is down to the government mandating manufacturers to build and sell electric vehicles, despite there simply not being enough demand to meet their ambitious targets. So how then are they going to get the UK back on track? How are they going to get the UK into the top 15 global automakers in such a short space of time, the next 5 years? Well, as this article makes reference to throughout, the intent behind these plans is to attract electric car manufacturers into the UK. Naturally, that means Chinese car makers, given their dominant position in this field. Car makers Omoda, JQ, Chery and Deepal, they've all expressed interest in building right here in the UK. And it certainly looks like they're going to be welcomed in order to help the UK become this car industry powerhouse the government wants it to be. I mean, the brands are going to be as British as Shanghai, but hey, we'll be making cars at least. Next, let's talk about this. This is interesting. So, synthetic fuels will coexist with EVs, says solar fuel maker. This is coming from Autocar. Claims the fuels will allow electricity harvested outside of Europe to be used for decarbonisation in the region. So what this is speaking about is synthetic fuels, and if you don't know too much about them, stick with me here. And what it's also talking about is the logistical advantage over electricity if we're talking about moving it around the world. Now, I find synthetic fuels, they're one of these things it's always kind of on the periphery, but no one ever really addresses it, no one ever really talks about it. And the thing is, if emissions reduction is truly the goal here, you have to question why. Why hasn't it been more explored? Because, I mean, firstly, it can be used in all of our existing cars. No need to change a thing. You can just pour this fuel into the tank, and for the most part, it works as normal. There's no need to go producing lithium batteries, mining the rare property metals, and if we're thinking about emissions here, no need to be expelling all the emissions that comes from these processes. It is a solution that exists right now that cuts emissions by 80%. I mean, surely that's worth taking a look at. The downside is, and it is a big downside, they're 3 times the price of regular fuel. But imagine that we were decades into the development of them like we are with electric vehicles. Imagine they received the same subsidies, the same incentives the EVs have had over the years. I'm sure that development would have made that cost come down over time. Now, as for the article, will they exist alongside EVs? Well, no, is the answer. Certainly not here in the UK long term at least, because, well, it doesn't tie in with a mandated agenda, does it? Which in reality is all about electric vehicles and selling electric vehicles, getting electric vehicles into the hands of the public. It's not necessarily about lowering emissions, as counterintuitive as that seems. But yes, I do think synthetic fuels, they do have a bit of a future elsewhere. Next, Citroen, they're struggling to get through their urgent recalls for a faulty airbag fitted in their C3 and DS3 cars. They issued a stop driving order last month when a woman in France was fatally injured by a faulty airbag. A shard of metal flew off of it and impaled her, even though it was a relatively minor road traffic accident. Now, there are a suspected 120,000 motorists affected by this here in the UK, so you can imagine how busy the dealerships are trying to get through them. I really do hope you don't own one of these cars and this is the first you're finding out about it. Now, currently, the wait to get booked in is around 1 month, and until then, the cars are deemed completely unsafe to drive, which is pretty unfair on the owners. I don't think there's any compensation or anything like that being mentioned. All Citroen have said is they've mobilised their entire team to try and get through them as quickly as possible. Next up, let's talk about Lotus, because this is all a little bit strange. Lotus has no plans to close UK Hethel factory after meeting with government. So you might have seen, same as I did last month, reports last week claimed Lotus was to end UK car manufacturing. However, car maker has denied the rumour and reaffirmed commitment to the UK, and that pledge came as the government met with Lotus over the weekend. So it was a rumour, but enough of a rumour that the government actually made the time to meet with them. I suspect what may have happened here is there might have been legitimate plans for Lotus to leave the UK. We'll never know. This is just my theory. But do you remember a couple of months ago, the government came out and said we're making a couple changes to the ZEV mandate. Micro car makers under a certain capacity, they're not going to be counted in the ZEV mandate, the zero emission vehicle mandate. And Aston Martin and McLaren, these gem manufacturers, they're not going to be counted in it either. So I suspect the government have gone in there and added Lotus onto that list. The conversation might have gone along the lines of, oh no, of course, you were always going to be on that list. No need to go leaving the UK. You can crack on making your petrol cars and actually turn a profit. You can continue to make the cars that the public actually want to buy. However, as I say, that's just my theory. We'll never actually know. Maybe it was just a rumour. Next, let's just talk briefly about what's happening on the other side of the pond. I think it's often very relevant. I understand the viewership of my channel is very much UK based, but I think it is relevant to talk about at certain times. So Trump's big, beautiful bill, what a name, is bad for American EVs, but it could have been worse. So what's happening there is, as soon as September, Trump is essentially getting rid of the EV mandate. Just another reason as to why Elon Musk is no longer his best friend. So that money that used to be given, $7,500 federal credit, or rebate, sorry, that used to be given for electric vehicles, and $4,000 federal credit that could be used on used EVs, that's going away. Originally, it was going to run until 2032. But as I say, as soon as September, that could be no more. Now, the reason that the article is saying this could have been worse is because originally this bill had a surcharge for electric vehicles on it. And the idea behind that, this surcharge, I think it was about $250, is owners were going to have to pay that because they weren't buying fuel. They weren't contributing to the tax that's on fuel that's used to maintain the roads and so on. However, that has been taken out. So yes, bad for EVs, but could have been worse. On to our final story for today. Almost half of UK drivers break the speed limit. Interesting. And that's an improvement. New figures show that 40% of drivers speed on both motorways and in 30 mile per hour zones, with even more doing so in 20 mile per hour areas. The 20 mile per hour areas, we've spoken about this quite a bit before. I find it difficult to stick to 20 miles per hour. I'm going to be honest, not maliciously, not because I'm trying to be a rule breaker, but I mean, you're paying attention to everything else, aren't you? It's so easy for that speedo to creep above 20 mile per hour. It's such a low speed as you're being tailgated by a cyclist. Now, the interesting conversation that I think comes from this is, well, are all those 40% drivers completely in the wrong? Or is it the case that speed limits, are they just a bit too low nowadays? Again, I know the 20 mile per hour areas, that attracts massive criticism, and I can completely understand why. Meanwhile, on the other hand, I can completely understand it outside of a residential area that's busy. Maybe there's a school on the other side of the road. And on that note of speed limits just being a bit too low in the UK, I mean, it's an interesting conversation, isn't it? Because you think about the last time that there was any substantial change to the limits or an increase, it's way back in the 70s, wasn't it? You compare a car from the 70s to something much more modern day, the distances that they're going to take to pull up will be wildly different. The safety between the two models will be wildly different. So yeah, that is an interesting conversation. Are limits just a little bit too low, or do 40% of us need to slow down? Now, before I conclude this video, quick mention for today's video sponsor, Vehicle Score. If you're in the market for a used car, you need to be doing an HPI check, and make sure it's a good one. Make sure it's checking the right stuff, which Vehicle Score certainly is. I'll add a 20% discount voucher for their HPI check in the description below, but remember, they do also offer a free check from their website as well. As ever, thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed this, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and I'll see you next time.